Hello and welcome to the program. I'm Millicent Walker in Lagos. We begin today as Russia's invasion of Ukraine entered day 217. President Volodymyr Zelensky marked Ukraine's annual Day of Dignity and Freedom today by celebrating the sacrifices made by his people since Russia's invasion and saying they would endure and prevail. In a video addressed to the nation, Mr. Zelensky hailed the contributions made by people of all kinds, from soldiers, firefighters and medics to teachers giving online lessons, villagers cooking for the military, tailors sewing uniforms and farmers ploughing their fields despite the risk. He praised their defiance despite frequent missile strikes, wide-scale destruction, shortages and rolling blackouts as winter sets in, almost exactly 9 months since Russia's invasion. We can be left without money, without gasoline, without hot water, without light, but not without freedom. Mr. Zelensky said in an address he delivered standing in an ornate room at the presidential palace in the capital, Kyiv. The Day of Dignity and Freedom marks the pro-European Union protests of 2013-2014 that became known as the Maiden Revolution of Dignity and the 2004 Orange Revolution. In both revolutions, Ukraine's leadership was overthrown. Meanwhile, Ukraine's nuclear power plant, the largest in Europe, has once again come under attack, prompting the UN to warn of a potential nuclear disaster. The Zaporizhzhia plant in southern Ukraine is under Russian control. It was rocked by more than a dozen blasts on Saturday evening and Sunday, according to the International Atomic Energy Agency, IAEA. The head of the UN watchdog, Rafael Grossi, said the explosions were extremely disturbing and whoever was doing it was playing with fire. Both Russia and Ukraine have blamed each other for the attacks. The IAEA team on the ground said there had been damage to some buildings, systems and equipment, but none of them critical for nuclear safety and security so far. Well, the Kremlin has said it is not concerned by renewed shelling, or rather said that it is concerned by the renewed shelling of the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant, and called on other countries to use their influence to help end attacks on Europe's largest nuclear power station. Ukraine's Zaporizhzhia plant, which is under Russian control, was rocked by shelling, according to the spokesperson, Kremlin spokesman. He says, "We call on all countries of the world to use their influence so that the Ukrainian armed forces will stop doing this." Repeated shelling at the plant south of Ukraine has raised concerns about the potential for a grave accident just 500 kilometers from the site of the world's worst nuclear accident, the 1986 Chernobyl disaster. Another shelling took place at Makivka fuel depot today. A large fire broke out near the Donetsk in the Russian-controlled part of East Ukraine. The blaze was caused by an explosive flammable object, according to the Emergencies Ministry of the self-proclaimed Donetsk People's Republic, which Russia officially annexed in September. The fire affected 3 fuel tanks on the ground and 2 railway tank cars. Some 25 trucks were called to the scene, but no casualties were reported. Makivka, to the east of the Russian-controlled city of Donetsk, has been the subject of intense shelling in recent weeks. At least 1 person died when a shell hit an apartment block on the 4th of November. Let's go and talk to VOA's Anna Chernikova. She joins me now from Kyiv. Anna, it's good to see you. First, Anna, talk to us about today, Ukraine's annual Day of Dignity and Freedom.
Yes, good evening. Today, Ukraine marks ninth year since the Revolution of Dignity. It's a day of dignity and freedom, and it's never a celebration in Ukraine. It's more, a day of remembrance, because over 100 people died in the very central part of Kyiv, in its central square, as a result at the end of the revolution. So it was kind of the end of revolution when people died, and previous president escaped the country and ran away. So for Ukraine, it's Ukrainians consider this revolution as the beginning of this, modern Ukrainian modern fight for freedom, because if we look at the history of Ukraine, Ukrainian nation was always fighting for its independence, and this was definitely the biggest fight, this revolution of dignity in the modern history of Ukraine. And Ukrainians consider today's war, full-scale war, which is happening right now, as a continuation, as another part of this fight. And Ukrainians consider that this war is actually happening for 9 years now, almost 9 years, because right after the Revolution of Dignity was over, Russian forces, Russian Federation annexed Crimea and started war in the Donbas. So these events are definitely, Ukrainians definitely consider these events as one big, thing. And yes, this is important. It's important that Ukrainians remember this day as this beginning of this bigger fight for Ukrainian independence and freedom.
Indeed. And Anna, we heard from Ukraine's president promising victory, over Russia's over today, and this is concerning what is happening, Russia's invasion in Ukraine. Is there renewed hope that Ukraine will emerge victorious and that this war will come to an end?
Well, yes. I mean, Ukrainians. This is symbolic. So this is kind of symbolic that today and absolutely every day of this war, Ukrainians believe in that, and Ukrainians, Ukrainian armed forces, try to do something that people actually have what to believe in. And of course, recent events such as the liberation of Kherson and big part of Kherson region on the right bank of the River of Dnipro proves this. And definitely this, victories, and President Zelensky was also talking about these victories such as liberation of Kyiv region, Kharkiv region, Kherson region, because for the moment we know that Ukrainian forces liberated bigger half of what Russian forces occupied since February 24th. So definitely this is symbolic. Ukrainian government and Ukrainian president say that some news and good news might come a bit later from the front line, because for the moment there is no details or no information about any new advances or any new counteroffensive. We just know that counteroffensive actions continue, but no much details are coming.
And Anna, to what we're hearing, the shelling close to the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant, is it clear who has been shelling the plant?
We cannot independently verify this, and we cannot independently confirm this, of course, because this is a front line basically, and unfortunately, this nuclear power plant is located just in the middle of this front line. Ukrainian officials accuse Russian forces. Russian officials accuse Ukrainian forces. If we look at the picture in general and analyze it in general, I should say that Russian forces shell this area more than Ukrainians. But again, we cannot really give any analysis, because we don't have enough evidence, official evidence. However, what we can see that Russian forces very often use nuclear power plant as a kind of a blackmailing, and unfortunately, Russian forces use nuclear power plant in the Zaporizhzhia region to trying to push Ukrainian side and international society to basically have negotiations that they want. And this kind of nuclear blackmailing continues. And what we hear from International Agency for the International Atomic Energy Agency, they ask both sides to stop and to demilitarize this zone. They also do not say exactly who they think is shelling, because I guess they also don't have this capacity to say. However, Ukrainian side is at least officially, and it was also announced by International Atomic Agency, that Ukrainian side is open for discussions for the demilitarized zone around nuclear power plants. So it looks like Russian side should, also be ready for that. For the moment, what we can see that Russian forces shell Zaporizhia region very badly. And of course, this creates much greater risk for the Zaporizhia nuclear power plant. And we also hear, at least, again, this is not official information or something we can verify, but we hear a lot of stories from local societies that they hear this short range shooting in the city of Enerhodar, which is where the Zaporizhia nuclear power plant is located. So we can just say that this zone should be demilitarized. This is for sure, and both sides should do everything to enable this, implement this demilitarization zone, because unfortunately, what we can also see that Ukraine has quite a lot of nuclear facilities on its territory, and only nuclear facilities which are occupied or were occupied by Russian Federation are at risk. So I guess it should be also, considered in general. So what I can say is that if shelling continues, nuclear power plant remains under very high risk, and definitely International Atomic Energy Agency is asking both sides to stop it, and the international community is asking Russia to get out from nuclear power plant in the Zaporizhia region, to actually get access to Ukrainian experts to stabilize it, because before occupation and before full-scale invasion, it was never a problem with any of the nuclear facility in Ukraine, and this was confirmed by Mr. Gross.
And we understand that they indeed are taking, a large assessment of the shelling, the likely damage to the nuclear power plant. But talk to us about Kherson. The governor there said that his priority is making people feel safe again. Is there a semblance of normality in the city?
Well, the city is coming back to normal step by step. These steps are definitely not huge, because we should remember that city of Kherson remains under extremely high risk of shelling, because Russian forces are located just on the other side of the river, and the distance is minimal. So what is good for the citizens of Kherson, that electricity is starting to come back, not everywhere, but for instance, the train station has electricity now, and a lot of people are coming there to charge their phones, to get some heating, to get some news and communication. Also, over the weekend, it was the first train from Kyiv to Kherson, and this was also a great, celebration in Kherson when this first train from Kyiv arrived. A lot of people arrived there who have relatives in Kherson, or just people who bought tickets before Kherson was liberated, because it was kind of initiative from Ukrainian railway that people were able to buy tickets to Kherson, and so when Kherson is liberated, they can have this trip. Humanitarian aid is there, products and Ukrainian services are coming back there. We hear that Ukrainian delivery services are also coming back. So of course people are getting this life, kind of life that they had had before, part of this life back. But we have to be we have to be, of course, very careful with saying that people are safe, because they are not safe, definitely not safe. Ukrainian government is doing what they can, but and Ukrainian, of course, Ukrainian soldiers, first of all, Ukrainian army, but Russian forces remain on the other side of the river. And over the weekend, it was a new shelling of the city of Kherson. Unfortunately, it was confirmed that one person died due to the shelling, and 3 are injured. So, you know, situation is like that. It is risky, but it is, you know, coming back to normal as much as it could be in that circumstances.
Viewers, Anna Chernikova from Kyiv. Thanks a lot, Anna. Continues to stay safe.
Thank you.
And Anna did say that there are risks to Kherson, but then in the week since Russia pulled out of the city, semblance of hope, optimistic busyness has returned. Now, the port city was captured by Russia in March, just days after the forces invaded Ukraine. It was the only regional capital Russia managed to seize since February, but its military was forced to withdraw last week. Take a look at this report.
Here's the moment hundreds of Kherson residents over the weekend flocked to stock up on groceries at the first Ukrainian supermarkets to open since the city was retaken by Ukrainian forces over a week ago. During the near 9 months of occupation, the Russian-installed government had brought in Russian-sourced goods and even introduced the ruble as currency. On Sunday, 49-year-old Natalia Zivion, who used to work in Germany as a midwife, queued up amongst the crowds at her favorite Ukrainian supermarket, ATB.
ATB is our favorite shop. It's our favorite Ukrainian goods. Since February, we've only had Russian shops and goods. Out of principle, I didn't carry any ruble. I never bought Russian goods. Today is the first day that our favorite supermarket and Russian goods launches. That's why I'm here. I want to buy something tasty.
Kherson remains without electricity, running water or heating, but residents found some relief in buying Ukrainian gherkins, dumplings and horseradish, among other household favorites. Among customers packing their grocery carts to the brim was Artem, who was just relieved to finally be able to buy sugar-free Coca-Cola, which he claimed was unavailable during the occupation. For 24-year-old Kalita, the price tags are really nice.
We walk through the aisles with such eyes, our eyes widely open, seeing the price tag. We're not even sure what to buy because actually we need every product. The prices are really nice, but we won't fit everything into our cart. And the queue is so long, we've already been waiting for 2 hours now.
On Sunday, devotees attended service at an Orthodox cathedral in Kherson in prayers and thanksgiving for the liberation of the city.
I prayed for the liberation of Kherson. I myself am from a place which is not far from here, about 40 kilometers. I moved to Kherson 3 weeks ago. I managed to move here as my son lives here. I have 2 sons. They serve in the Ukrainian army. They are defending Ukraine. I am for Ukraine. Our whole family is for Ukraine.
Ukrainian forces re-entered Kherson on Friday, November the 11th, after Russian troops abandoned the only regional center captured since their full-scale invasion of Ukraine in February. And 2 weeks prior to their departure, officials from the Russian-installed government said they had removed the remains of 18th century Russian legendary military commander Grigory Potemkin from its burial place in St. Catherine's Cathedral and moved them to a safe place in fear that they could be vandalized.
Welcome back. Ukraine's culture minister has reported that Russian troops retreating from Kherson looted nearly 15,000 artifacts from the Kherson Art Museum. According to Alexander Thachenko, the most significant artifact were taken. The Kherson Arts Museum said on Facebook a few dozen of Russian soldiers arrived at the museum October 31, and for the next 3 days we're seeing carrying out paintings, work of art wrapped in pieces of cloth from the museum, which were loaded onto trucks.
As for museums, unfortunately what they did, they in several days in advance of liberation of Kherson by Ukrainian military forces, simply robbed 2 museums and stole the most significant artifacts. In art museum probably it was almost 80% of collection, and big part in another museum, mainly the most expensive pictures, coins, whatever they robbed, and this is one of the ways how they believe territory can be. If it not there, then they are stealing artifacts, bringing back on the territory which they control. Unfortunately, exposition is quite big, with a lot of international painters from Italy and Britain, and of course local. Probably it cost a lot, and in another museum all archaeological and historical objects were also stolen, so it's also impressive amount. I only can give you estimation. For example, 1 or 2 coins of prehistorical era can cost thousands, if not dozens of thousands of dollars.
Away from Kherson, the Kremlin says it is not discussing calling up more Russian soldiers to fight in Ukraine with a second round of mobilization. Spokesman Peskov said that he cannot speak for the defense ministry, but there are no discussions in the Kremlin about it. President Vladimir Putin ended the first mobilization drive at the end of October, but has not revoked an official decree which provides the legal basis for the draft, a decision that has caused concern among some who say the Kremlin is keeping its options open for a future round. The first order prompted thousands of Russian men to flee the country to avoid being conscripted and sparked the largest anti-Kremlin protests across the country since Moscow sent its troops in February. Staying with the Russia-Ukraine war, Western countries must be careful not to create new dependencies on China as they are weaning off from Russian energy supplies amid Moscow's war on Kyiv. NATO chief Jens Stoltenberg warned today. He told a NATO parliamentary assembly in Madrid that spending of 2% of GDP on defense should be a floor and not the ceiling for defense investments from allies. Spanish Prime Minister Pedro Sanchez also addressed the NATO Parliamentary Assembly and said Spanish police will be deployed in Ukraine over the coming weeks to help investigate alleged war crimes. An advanced delegation of Spanish police officials have already arrived in Kyiv to meet with representatives of the Ukrainian Public Prosecutor's Office.
But we need to be careful not to create new dependencies, most notably on China. We see growing Chinese efforts to control our critical infrastructure, supply chains and key industrial sectors. Chinese rare earth minerals are present everywhere, including in our phones, our cars and our military equipment. We cannot give authoritarian regimes any chance to exploit our vulnerabilities and undermine us. At the summit in Vilnius, defense investments will be an important topic, and I expect allies to continue making progress, including with commitments beyond 2024, because 2% of GDP on defense should be considered a floor, not a ceiling for our defense investments.